Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. And you never can tell just how close you are. It may be near, but it seems so far. So stick to the fight when you're hardest hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. This poem resonates within me in a manner that no other has. One ship, a stormy night, and the captain holds the ship steady. In that moment, I see determination on his face. This was the part of my visualization when I sat on my desk in the school and memorized these words for the toughest moments I'd face in my life. I'm Ananta, and today I'm going to tell you about my life, some adventures I've had, and how they make me rethink what it is to be brave. I share my experiences on rebelling traditional societal structures, a story of confronting various mental health diagnoses and misdiagnoses, and how my family and I confronted cultural norms and the general idea of societal obligations to follow our hearts. I was born in India and I spent my formative years in the UK. I came back to India with my family in the end of the 90s and spent the rest of my childhood regretting their decision. I then spent the majority of my early 20s traveling across Europe, Asia, and parts of the Middle East, searching for the meaning of life. I spent 9 years in the thick of the world's largest performing arts festival, the Edinburgh Fringe, and I have spoken to thousands of people from virtually every country, including North Korea. I maintain my sense of calm by practicing a Zen meditation technique called Zazen for 20 minutes every morning. Why is that? What makes me dedicate my morning routine to a meditative practice every day? Let me fill you in on the background first. I'm born to two wonderful parents. These are my parents, and that's me. My parents are very motivated, talented, creative individuals, and according to my family and the society they represent, they're both very dysfunctional. It took me 8 years of traveling and 3 years of education in Europe to realize that they're not dysfunctional, they are neurodiverse and burdened by the expectations of a demanding society. Now, when you look at both of them, they come across as the average Indian man and woman. Only my mother is characterized by a hyperactive imagination that makes her run from one place to another all the time. She struggles to write a full sentence in English or her mother tongue, but you ask her to design clothes or speak to a 150 diverse group of nationalities in a day, and she will do it with a smile that quite literally lights up my whole world. My dad, he's your average eccentric intellectual. He has an odd sense of humor and can talk about any topic under the sun. He's well traveled, his English is impeccable, he spurns out Sanskrit shlokas at a mile a second. All my life, I saw him on a computer churning out pages one after another. A few years ago, he told me he was dyslexic. Wrong. His challenges are not restricted to just writing. It includes anger management, repetitive rituals, and an obsession for routine. My mother has shown examples of a highly passionate life. Her creativity spoke to me through time and distance when I picked up on her trade 10 years ago. She is a henna artist, and she accidentally stumbled upon the world's largest performing arts festival in 1995, the Edible Fringe. In the early 90s, we lived in Scotland, and it was here that she began her journey with henna. But when we moved from Scotland to India in 1998, a few very strange and interesting things happened to us. A house fell apart, we went bankrupt, the family separated, not once but twice. Once when I was 7, and then 11. At 13, my mum suffered a semi-paralytic collapse. It was my sister and our neighbors that sorted us out in the initial days. After that, our family helped us with just a few phone calls. For those months that she was bedridden, it was just me, my sister, and a housemate. That was also the year I got my first cooking lesson, and I almost burnt the stove down by accident. At 16, my grandfather on my father's side passed away. The family came together one last time before exploding into a cacophony of blame games that evidently sacrificed my mother, and that gave us enough clues that we should leave. It was clear we were not valued. My mother, my sister, and I left our patriarchal home and moved to our mother's home. Despite everything that happened within the family, my mother went to the Fringe every year, without failure. That helped her run the house and care for her two kids. As children, it was painful for us to live without our mother for 6 weeks every year, but it gave her purpose and a feeling of being belonged and valued. She was happy when she came back, and that mattered to us more than anything else. Surrounded by all kinds of performers and artisans, she could be herself and not be judged. That place was life. At the age of 19, determined to help her, I landed in Edinburgh, 3 weeks before the start of the festival. She'll draw, I'll explain. Great team. A week later, after my arrival, she gave me the news that her visa didn't work out, and she wouldn't be able to come. So here I am. I can't draw nor apply henna, and suddenly the weight of the household was on my head. Determined to win and full aware that quitting and going home was not an option, I contacted all of my mum's friends and colleagues in Edinburgh, stitched a tray together, and sat with a banner and two stools in front of the dustbin at Hunter Square, waiting patiently for my first customer. 2 hours went by, 3 hours, and I had no one. Imagine a little Indian girl sitting on a tiny stool with a few posters laid out in front of her in cold Scotland. I was breaking. I was scared and alone. What if no one came to me? What if I wasn't good enough? But then, as soon as the sun bent over my side, one girl came up to me and asked for a rose. Easy. I scribbled roses on my notebooks all the time. That gave me confidence to draw more, and I began to draw abstract, and they liked it. And I never stopped. It rained, it shined, we buskers and street artists were pushed along by the council and the police, but I and my gang continued to fight for our dream and our right as street artists for 9 long years. When I think about how it all started, it makes me laugh now. My mother's colleagues were a bit shocked at the situation that a 19-year-old with these big brown eyes had just landed up clueless 2 weeks before an international festival and managed to pull it along. This would have been our 10th year, but instead I spent the summer starting two enterprises, planning my first TEDx talk, and living an ordinary but welcomed life. The Edinburgh Fringe stayed at the epicenter of our lives, the glue that kept us all together, happy and sane. Even when we were tossed from one city to another, even when the family broke down. Now let me explain why this was extraordinary. We come from quite a successful family, with its own burden of privilege. My mother was well educated, with a double master's, but what she really loved was art, and she rebelled ferociously against the system through words and action. She was the oldest daughter-in-law, sitting in the streets of a foreign land holding the hands of random white people. Excuse the political incorrectness, but it didn't go well with the in-laws. You can ignore the fact that we had barely any income, but honor in India is everything. When I took over her art business, I faced a lot of backlash from my father and a lot from other members of the family. They didn't recognize it as a career. They didn't even recognize it as an enterprise. But I didn't care. I continued her legacy, and I kept the whole journey hidden. But hold on a second. At this point, I had been trudging along with depression for 8 years. For the entire time, from 7 until this point, I had been carrying the weight of a broken family, an exhausted mother, and a critical society that had been clipping my wings every time I tried to fly. And in 2016, my entire system collapsed, and I experienced a mental breakdown. That was the same year a goon broke into our house and almost got away with the life of my mother. Assuming that no one else was at home, two village goons came by harassing her for money. I heard someone muffling, and assuming it was a monkey attacking her, I ran out with a stick. Shocked to see her pulled to the ground by two men, I ran after them and got them arrested. What followed were rendezvous with lawyers and police officers. I gave up my country's legal system because it was either that or my own educational opportunities. A year later, I left India for my second master's degree and a scholarship, vowing to never come back to a system that allows such things to happen and remain a bystander. In 2016, I landed in a strange sounding city called Wroclaw. If there's anything I can give away from the story here, we can safely assume that I've had plenty of flight or fight situations and that I always got better. I had been, since the age of 19, contributing a majority of my time and energy, supporting emotionally and financially a family of 4 separated individuals. I was exhausted. 8 years of depression and struggles in academia, I realized that I couldn't stay away from medical help, and I needed psychological guidance. Most importantly, I began to realize how I didn't really fit into the box that I was given to respect. So at 25, I started talking to psychologists, different ones, all over the country and abroad. When I tried to have myself diagnosed, I tried a dyslexia test upon the request of my university therapist. I finished the test but ran out of money, and then the pandemic happened, so I never managed to get the full results. I tried to have myself tested for ADHD and anxiety disorders before that. The psychiatrist suggested I may be an obsessive personality. I left in a huff. Me? Obsessive? Well, who's going to get the job done? And the third, well, the first and the most embarrassing was after my 2016 collapse, when the doctor clearly thought I was the S word. And this was at India's premier health institution. But really, it was this social and academic pressures and my own undiagnosed disability that had me breaking down repeatedly. When I would share my dragging depression to my dad, he'd say, at any given point of time, we have the potential to develop any psychological or physical malady. In the case of psychology, we can acknowledge it, but we shouldn't let it overcome us. My father's great. He just drops these pearls of wisdom like a bomb every now and then. And in fact, that's how he talks solely. And well, that's not very helpful when you say, Dad, what do I do with my life? What career choice should I make? Just take a deep breath. So at 18, I took a deep breath and I ran away from law school. Both my parents had evidently huge functionality issues, of which they had no knowledge of, yet they did what they had to do: raise two beautiful, driven, and motivated daughters. Say that to them, and they won't really agree with me, but it's true. Coming from India, we are still in the dark ages as far as mental disabilities and illnesses are concerned. We reject it first, and then we hope to be never confronted again. To top it off, we have feminism, patriarchy, and a dysfunctional traditional family system to guard against it. And here I am, every day. I grow older, the subject comes closer and closer to me. I suffered from depression for 8 years and came out of it without any antidepressants. What I had was a passionate mother, crazy colleagues, and absolute to die for friends. But first, I had to recognize that what I felt was wrong. And then I had to accept that help won't come easy because I don't have the money to pay for it. It is hard to diagnose a learning disorder in adults, precisely because as human beings, we are built up of a building blocks of experiences that teaches us right and wrong, good or bad, fair and unfair. And then if you're not 9 anymore, but 29 or 39, then well, of course, you know how to read or write or smile in front of a stranger and say, hello, would you like some henna? But of course, your everyday life includes you taking the wrong bus because you saw an 8 instead of a 5, or you totally forgot to eat your lunch, or you book a flight for December instead of September and end up on an isolated village in the middle of Poland drinking moonshine with an 84-year-old. Or you internally rehearse a million times what you're going to say to the cute guy next to you who's evidently your boyfriend. Do you want to drink wine tonight? Shall we go for a walk? Can I have a cuddle? I mean, I'm not an expert, but can I afford one? Is there one available to me? Do they have time for me? Hello, people in India. Can we have more psychologists and therapists, please? We don't want any more doctors and dentists. From my experiences so far, living in different cultures, I feel we need more psychology enthusiasts just for the sake of the community. I also feel that we need a better, more inclusive psychological assessment system than the American DSM. Depression, schizophrenia, anxiety, and the big 12 psychological disorders are just not enough to judge a vibrant, transactional, and honor based society like India. It's just not enough. But basics of mood and thought discrepancies, mania and depression, should be introduced into the education early enough. So when people become things they don't want to be or believe things that they shouldn't, based on unfair, traumatic personal experiences, they can get help. And so that people can recognize when someone is feeling bluer than usual or unusually happy and excited. So, how did I overcome my depression? One little thing allowed me to carry on, irrespective of everything that happened externally. When I was 9 years old, my mother taught me how to meditate. Watch your thoughts, be objective, and just observe. That was it. It took me 15 years to understand what that meant, but in all this time, I had mastered one thing: I am not my thoughts. Do not listen to your thoughts. Everything changes. And that quite literally saved my life, not once, but twice. I would like to say it was meditation all along, and knowing that there is a separation between me and my external reality and my thoughts helped. But I wasn't your average obedient child. I didn't like doing what I was told. Instead, I left my comfort zone. I left everything that didn't make me feel safe, even if it was my own family. I also used building blocks of experiences over a prolonged period of time through random meditative moments. My inner voice guided me to give myself short duration, easily achievable tasks that I knew would make me feel happy. I rewarded myself when nothing else would: a chocolate, a box of sushi, a mischievous activity like breaking some random family rule. As I grew older, my capacity to reward myself expanded. I started planning travels across India and some other countries. Budget trips, of course. I traveled Southeast Asia for 5 months on a bootstrap budget and just spent £2,500. That includes getting a diving certification. So it's all possible. I gave myself enough memories to feel happy about. At the Fringe from 2011, backpacking from 2012, being suicidal in 2013, finishing master's degree in 2014. By the time I had my first major breakdown in 2016, and then my scholarship success in 2017, to another breakdown in 2018, I had begun to notice a steady up and down pattern. And one day, it was all gone. I was free. When I sat down to meditate, I could breathe. I could relax in a way I had never done before. Years had gone by with me trying to let go of the years of stress and anger. I didn't do anything special. I just sat still and breathed. My father once told me a bee does not know it's not aerodynamic, yet it flies. True. That spirit pushes me on every time I think of writing a new Instagram post, or fools me into taking on another academic project. I'm dyslexic, remember? If you're the smartest person in a room, then you're in the wrong room. There, absolute gold for when I make mistakes. Of course, if I'm burning out, then I can only motivate myself to keep going forward, because going back is not an option. So here's another tip. It's a quick exercise and it will save you. If your heart starts sinking or beats unusually fast in the middle of the day or first thing in the morning, test which nostril is blocked and breathe from it. A quick remedy to anxiety or a depressive surge. You can try it now if you want. The force that you use to breathe from a blocked nostril gets the heart pumping enough to create a momentary sense of ease, which gets you out of the repercussions on your body because of your negative thought loop. If that doesn't work, then touch your heart or have another person do it for you. No, and gauge your heartbeat, and through slow breathing, allow it to slow down. This is an age old trick my father's been telling me since forever, and I only recently got the logic of it. Talk about learning disabilities. If you're walking on the street and your heart sinks even more because of a strange, weird thought, again, breathe, just like I just explained. When you wake up in the morning, do some exercises, sit in zazen, or just sit for 20 minutes and breathe. That's what I do every single day, or I try to. The whole thing sounds funny now, but it wasn't back then. I had been broken several times, once to the point that I was a millimeter close to calling it quits. I have failed and fallen so many times now that I can almost anticipate the next crash and prepare for it. If you stay calm, be mindful, take a step back, and just observe, you can see how it all adds up. Ladies, gentlemen, and gentlewomen, today I have made public a very personal part of my life, and parts of it for the first time I've ever spoken about out loud, hoping that my struggles and challenges will motivate you to look at the glass half empty and see it as a glass half empty and half full. Life is not just one or the other, it's an equal dose of both risk and reward, pain and pleasure, rain and sunshine. It just depends on where we focus on more. Courage is the only thing that we have that can keep us alive. Not only that it helps us stay alive, but it allows us to thrive. Stop for a second and choose to listen to the soft murmur in your head that says, I want. Listen harder and hear it say again, I want more. Don't stop wanting to be better, to live better, because if I can do it, so can you. Be brave. Thank you.